Welcome back, everyone, to Be the Hope. We are Thursday of the third week of Easter. I must admit, I was recording a video for this morning, and I said, welcome back. We are Thursday of the third week of Lent. I had to stop that video and restart it. So,
but that's a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but we're Easter, so third week of Easter. I hope that all of you are doing well and that you were able to get outside and enjoy the nicer weather at the beginning of the week. It was great to see everyone on the food drive on Monday. My neck is still some sunburns. It's still a little sore, but yeah, my face is still a little red too, but we're going to ignore that. I've got a wonderful tan line going on. But anyways,
Me too.
Jessica, how are you?
Oh, not bad. You know, this quarantine's getting to all of us, I think, but I can't complain too much. I'm still healthy, still keeping busy, so not too bad.
There you go. So today we're going to reflect on the readings, primarily the first reading. We might touch a little bit on the gospel just because it talks about the bread of life discourse, aka the Eucharist. Yeah. I wrote a paper on the bread of life discourse on John 6 before I came back to the Catholic Church, and very plainly said in my paper, oh, he's got to be talking about really eating his flesh and drinking his blood, and yet I still rejected the Eucharist for the longest time. But that's a story for another day. So anyways, but Jessica, what stood out to you in this? I know you had a verse that stuck out to you.
So the verse that stuck out to me was actually in the gospel. It's the first line. So Jesus said to the crowds, "No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draw him." And at first I wasn't really sure why that stood out to me so much, but as Emma and I talked beforehand and I kind of prayed about this a little bit, I realized that what stuck out to me was the fact that we usually think about how we search after God, that God is not like physically present right here with us on earth. So sometimes it can be really hard to understand who we're praying to or who we're talking to and who we're trying to be in this relationship with. And we think about us seeking God, but it's actually God who first seeks us out. And it's less about us finding God than it is about God finding us and us allowing God to find us. And that's something really hard, I think, for us to understand. But he does this in multiple ways. He does this through grace and prayer and the sacraments, but he also does this through other people. And that's where I saw a huge connection between the gospel and our first reading and Philip and this eunuch that he is talking with.
Yeah, and I mentioned to Jessica before we started, like the question that comes to mind when I read this passage is, who is your Philip, right? Who is the one that walks with you, not just to like teach you about the faith, like yes, that's important, but also who's the one that's willing to walk with you and be a companion with you through faith, because that's what Philip does to this eunuch. I mean, just a quick overview of the first reading is that this eunuch is reading the scriptures, right? And Philip comes across this eunuch and says, what are you reading? Do you understand it? He says, well, I don't understand. Explain it to me. And then Philip starts to explain the scriptures to him. That's a spark noted version. So, but I think it's a good point for us to reflect on, like, who are the people in our lives that journey with us, because we are called to communion. We're called to be with one another, right? Our faith, it's personal. Like, our faith is unique. The way that I communicate with God is different than the way you communicate with God, right? But yet there's still commonalities between that. We still are seeking that communication, and we're seeking to walk with each other and guide each other, and ultimately we're trying to get the other person to heaven, and helping them in that. And I think Philip just does that, illustrates a very beautiful example of what does a virtuous friend look like, what does a virtuous companion look like in the journey. Somebody who's willing to explain things but also push you to be a better person, right? To be better in the faith, and God's grace in drawing us to himself is never ceasing, right? It's just it's continuous. Even when we're in the lowest of lows, he's still calling us to himself. And I just love in Eucharistic prayer number 3 when it says, when the priest will pray, you never cease to gather people to yourself, referring to God continuously gathering us to himself. And, no one can come to me unless the Father that sent me draws him, So
And that's a lot like the readings for this weekend too. The readings for this weekend are all about sheep and how our Lord is the shepherd and we're the sheep. And whenever I hear that line about gathering people to himself, I have that image of the shepherd and the sheep and how we are the sheep and the Lord's the shepherd. And sheep like to just kind of wander off. And
they are not smart.
No, they're not very smart. They just walk off a cliff without anyone guiding them. But the other thing, and this is something I've been reflecting a lot on in preparation for this weekend, sheep will only listen to the voice of their shepherd. They pay very close attention to the voice of the shepherd, and they'll only listen to him. And I think that's a real question for us today, but also in preparation for this weekend. Like, do you know what the voice of the Lord sounds like? Have you been drawn into a relationship enough that you know what the voice of the Lord sounds like? And I mean, personally, I struggle with that sometimes. Like I hear something in my head, but I'm like, is that me? Is that the Lord talking to me? Is that the devil trying to get me to do something? Like I have to work on knowing what the voice of the Lord sounds like so I know who to follow. Like a good little sheep, and not go walk off a cliff. So I think that's something that our friends can sometimes help us with. I was listening to it wasn't a podcast, it was a YouTube video about what struggles are the right struggles. And basically it was the idea that, struggles aren't bad, but we are called to certain struggles and not called to others. And one example that was kind of crazy was like, well, you might struggle with guilt after you rob a bank, but is that a good struggle? No, you shouldn't rob a bank so that you struggle with the guilt. Like that's not a good struggle. But right. The struggle of like searching for God as he like draws you, that's a good struggle. But you also need other people to help you to know what the voice of the Lord is in that struggle and know that you're not alone in trying to figure that out.
Right. Yeah. And the other people they can very much so speak into you, like how the Lord speaks to you. Like they may recognize it from the outside source of like saying, well, this, based on your personality, like that this might be how the Lord is speaking to you, because he speaks to us in that very unique and special way. And yeah, the image of the Good Shepherd, one of my favorites, how he will leave the 99, right? The song Reckless Love, when
yes.
he's going to leave the 99 to come and find you. But also like, it's a beautiful image of just a communion of saints, but also the community of Christians here on earth, that when Jesus goes and he goes to get someone, how everyone is still together waiting to welcome that person back in. And that's, I think, the importance of community as well. Like we continue to walk with people just as Jesus walks with people. We continue to minister just as Jesus continues to minister. But ultimately, we are seeking the eternal food that he provides. We seek the bread of eternal life, and we follow him. Is it easy? No.
No. Sometimes we get really close to walking off cliffs and things like that. So
yeah.
No, not easy. Not always easy.
I would like to point out, though, that I think llamas and alpacas are a lot smarter than sheep. So
Emma, I have not encountered as many llamas and alpacas as you have, so I can't really comment, but yours is awfully cute.
He's so soft too. Like so soft. Anyway,
we really encourage you to think and pray today and the rest of this week about who your Philip is, who is walking alongside you, or who at different points in your life has walked alongside you. So, I mean, I was thinking about this. I would definitely not be the person I am today without my mom. But then also, like, I went to Catholic school for over 12 years of my life. I had lots of teachers teach me about the faith, but one who really like walked with me and actually helped me to apply it to everyday struggles and things like that more personally was my youth minister, and I'm still friends with her today.
Mhm.
So she's definitely walked with me for a good portion of my life. And then more recently, I've had multiple friends who maybe aren't like mentors necessarily, but are friends who will challenge me and who will help me to recognize when the voice I'm hearing is myself or God or the devil or whoever, you know.
Mhm.
So really think about who that is for you, and maybe consider telling them and thanking them for being that person for you.
Mhm.
And if you don't have someone, maybe consider who you can reach out to and ask to kind of walk along with you a little bit more, or who you can ask a question of, or things like that.
Right.
If you
And
can
you can
find,
have more than one person too,
oh yeah.
and I've had many people over the
Mhm,
years,
mhm,
and those relationships never fade. Uh,
mhm,
true spiritual and virtuous relationships never fade,
mhm.
and that's the encouraging thing. So yeah, to reflect on maybe who is that Philip, who's that person, but then also even reflect on maybe who are you a Philip to,
Yeah. Mhm.
or how you can be a better Philip. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, how can you be a
A
better
better
person?
guide. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So
So
cool.
lots to think about, lots to reflect on. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we're still just also a word of encouragement. Like I know I said this in my video yesterday. Don't get discouraged with the recent um, statement that came out from the bishops, like about the masses still being suspended. Like we want to encourage you that this still is a beautiful time of growth. It's not a punishment. It's not the bishops purposely denying us the sacraments. Like they're doing it for the health and well-being of who we are, and that's truly in line with Catholic social teaching. So and protecting the dignity and the sanctity and health and well-being of the human person and the life. So just encourage. I know we are both struggling with it, but it's there's a greater good from it. So we want to encourage you with that, to just keep fighting, keep persevering, and it
Maybe
will.
look for the positives and the graces that have
Mhm.
come out of this time. I know I've been reflecting on that a lot, and there's actually quite a few graces that have come out of this time that I've already seen, and I'm sure more that are yet to be seen that I'll eventually
Absolutely.
understand. So look for the positives and the graces that have already come out of it.
Hmm. Yeah. Cool. Well, we just wanted to encourage you with that too. Give you
Yep,
something to reflect on. Who's your Philip? Who you can be a Philip to? All of that jazz. So know that we are praying for you
all the
uh,
time.
all of the time. We miss you very much. We hope that we can be together in person very soon. So, like I said,
Yes.
know of our prayers. May God bless all of you richly.
Have a wonderful weekend soon.
Yay!